After 2 months of unprecedented increases, the U.S. unemployment rate took a surprising turn in May. It went down. This dip was a hopeful sign that the economy might be bouncing back from coronavirus lockdowns. But that dip wasn't universal. Black unemployment ticked upwards. It declined in June, but not at the same rate as unemployment overall. This follows a decade where the unemployment gap between white and black workers has been narrowing. But the recent unemployment figures reveal the financial fragility that has persisted for many black workers since the last recession, fragility that has left them poised for a difficult recovery this time around. Historically, recessions or periods of high unemployment have been worse for black Americans. If you look back 50 years, you can see that this isn't the first time black workers have faced these levels of joblessness.
Double-digit unemployment is actually nothing sort of unfamiliar for African Americans. So while everyone was kind of shocked about how high unemployment spiked when the pandemic hit, for African Americans, this is nothing new actually.
When it came to the 2008 financial crisis, all racial groups saw their wealth devastated. But wealth for black households was much slower to recover. A few factors contributed to this difference. Among them was that black workers were more likely to have temporary jobs during the recovery. This occurred for a couple of reasons.
So for instance, African Americans are overrepresented in the criminal justice system, and we know that having a criminal background, for instance, can be an impediment to employment. We also know that African Americans are more likely to be represented in temporary jobs and service sector jobs, the kind of jobs that can have sort of less stability, more turnover.
Government data shows that in 2018, white workers had on average 17 months more tenure at their jobs than black workers. Also, the differences for black and white workers in median household income and wages have largely remained unchanged for decades.
So some of the economists that I've been speaking to as I've been reporting on black unemployment point out that although African Americans were making gains in the labor market as the expansion continued, that really sort of masked some of the lingering inequalities that African Americans are dealing with in terms of wealth. And wealth is what we typically think of as providing a cushion to people when there is an economic downturn.
In 2016, the median black household had less than $18,000 in net worth, compared with $171,000 for white households. And in the fourth quarter of 2019, black home ownership was down 4 percentage points from 2007, while white home ownership had almost regained its pre-recession level. But as the economic expansion continued, there were signs that black workers were finally beginning to benefit. And in 2018, wages for black workers began to increase, and by February 2020, the black unemployment rate was near record lows. Then the coronavirus pandemic hit. By April, black unemployment had surged to 16.7%, compared to 14.7% overall. For black workers who kept their jobs, many were in industries that put them at risk. These employees made up a higher percentage of frontline workers, in industries like public transit and healthcare, than their share of workers overall.
So economists and other experts have really been pointing out that it has been a 1-2 punch for the African American community. First, on the health front, because African Americans have suffered a disproportionate number of deaths from COVID-19. And so some economists are kind of sounding the alarm that the recovery could not be even and could actually lag for African Americans.
But economists say the $2 trillion stimulus package and Paycheck Protection Program may be helpful in lowering black unemployment, although maybe not to pre-pandemic levels anytime soon.
There are some concerns, though, that some of the aid may not be reaching African American communities. So for instance, when the Paycheck Protection Program first rolled out, a lot of African American small businesses were reporting not being able to access it.
And protests over the killing of George Floyd might lead to more ideas and movement on solving some long-standing disparities.
A lot of the workers and business owners that we talked to also said perhaps now is a time to really have conversations about policies that will address these long-standing inequalities in wealth, in health, that African Americans have experienced and that this coronavirus pandemic really exposed once again.
The economic disparities felt by black workers are long-standing and interconnected, and as the last recovery showed, may take a long time to show signs of improvement.